Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey, and you're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment with special guest Christine Tieri. Christine is the president of Idea Agency and a certified brand specialist, a strategist, that is. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm going to give a little more background on Christine. As you mentioned, she is the founder of Idea Agency. She has a passion for problem solving and a quest for continued improvement. Christine works with businesses, brands, communities, and individuals to help build their path to success. As the only certified brand strategist in all of New England, Christine is driven to discover her clients' unique position, help them put a stake in the ground, and build programs to support their company goals. So I guess my first question for you, Chris, is what exactly does a brand strategist do?
So we really work with CEOs, presidents, marketing directors to help companies understand what their claim of distinction is and to put their stake in the ground and really make that claim that's defendable, in the marketplace, that is deliverable by their internal audience day in and day out, and also that's desirable to their audience. So, it's that combination of vision, culture, and audience where strong brands live, and we help our companies get there.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So do you have any tips for how do you get employees to buy into your brand?
Sure. So it's really a hot topic today. Many companies were very focused on externally promoting their brands, and very little attention was spent internally. And yet their employees are the people who deliver that brand day in and day out, whether they're on the front lines of, say, if they're at a bank, the teller line, or is it, maybe the back end customer service calls, those sorts of things. But everybody needs to deliver that brand. So in order to get people sort of excited about it, you have to spend some time and money investing in your people and having them understand what your brand is and really believing in the brand.
Makes sense.
So it's interesting. I interviewed recently Bernie Moreno. Bernie Moreno owns something like 25 or 30 car dealerships across the country. One of them happens to be in Burlington, Massachusetts. So he's built this amazing brand. Like, you go into the car dealership, first of all, it's beautiful. They greet you from like the beginning. They have a foundation of the building, all has the names inscribed to their first 200 customers as a reminder to their people that their customers are the foundation of their success.
Wow.
But this is what's so cool. So in interviewing him, I came to learn that when you walk into the building, now he's got like 900 employees in all of his different car dealerships. When you walk into the building, his business card is out front with his cell phone number on it.
Wow.
And he said sometimes he even puts his cell phone number in his ads. And I'm like, wow, is your phone going off all day? Is your phone going off all day long, like with people that are calling? And he's like, yeah, in fact, it is. But his reasoning behind it is he's like, as a company, I always tell my people that the customer comes first, that you do anything possible to help take care of the customer. But what am I really saying if I say, don't give anybody my phone number and I'm going to hide out in a office way in the back and nobody can ever reach me? He's like, then I'm saying that I'm not willing to take care of the customer too.
Right. So it's really starting from the top.
Yes. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. So he takes phone calls from people all day and he's like, is everybody happy when they call? No. He's like, I deal with people that are upset about, I don't know, the price that they're paying for the car and stuff. But he's like, the most important piece is I want my employees to take care of the customers the way that I'm willing to take care of the customers. Because don't you think it's, as a brand strategist, don't you think that it's these little teeny tweaks that you make in the business that make a big difference to your brand?
It is a huge difference. And here you go. You have the vision of the company, which is customers first. And then he's showing firsthand how to do it and making sure that his culture is adopting that everybody works for him, is following suit. And of course, from a desirable standpoint, that's great for his audience because they want that contact, or they at least want to know that they have access.
Yeah.
So,
because you think about it, 99% of the people are not going to call.
Right.
No.
Like, I'm not going to call Bernie Moreno, but most people aren't. But just the fact that he gets it. Even like he sits down, his desk is with all the other desks in the place. Kind of like Zappos. Tony Hsieh does the same thing. He's got a cubicle with everybody else. So what do you think some of the biggest branding mistakes that companies make are?
Well, the first one to start off with is not investing in your own people and thinking that marketing is just external, because it's not. It's also internal. I also think that people get fragmented now, and I forget who it was who coined the term the splinter net, but that really is sort of what it is. Now all of our messages are splintered everywhere, and people get wooed by the next sort of shiny object, and they'll put a message over here that's different than a message that's over there. So for me, consistency is ever more important. And when you lead with brand, you have that one stake in the ground, and you always have to remember that. So whether you're doing a digital program, a digital advertising program, social media program, billboards, radio, TV, what have you, as long as you're putting that stake in the ground and it's consistent no matter what the medium, I think you're okay. But it's the brands that aren't doing that are faltering. So that I see as a big mistake, is losing the consistency dependent upon the tactic.
So different messages in different mediums, it just doesn't work.
Exactly. I think, you might have a different call to action. You might have, something else that's slightly different, but in the end, you have to be waving the same flag no matter where you are.
Interesting. So I know that you recently launched a new blog called Brand Stanza. What kind of stuff do you talk about on your site?
So I call it little ditties that build big brands. And it's designed to just have, little brand fodder, tips and tricks on how to build your brand. And most recently, I also added a segment called Amazing Leadership Brands. And they're really personalized, and I'm hoping to interview you, Stacey, to be to be on that. But really, it's talking about the leaders of great companies who embody a brand in and of themselves. And it's easy to see in celebrities like Oprah or somebody like that. You can understand what a personal brand is. But we have people leading great companies every day who are amazing leadership brands in and of themselves. So that's just sort of a little side project that I'm doing, but I think it all is encompassed under building a great brand.
That's awesome. So do you have any success stories, like customers that you've helped? What kind of stuff are you doing for your people?
Well, recently we helped rebrand an organization. They're actually one of the largest employers in Central Mass, and they had a really bad name. They were it was not indicative of what they did. They were a nonprofit company, and they helped adults with mental disabilities. And their name was Rehabilitative Resources, Inc., and they used to call themselves RRI, which was like very hard to say.
Yeah.
But they weren't really in the business of rehabilitation. They were in the business of helping people be their best selves and being empowered, the families and the individuals empowered to live the life that was right for them. And it was coming up on their 40th anniversary, and they said, you know what, it's time that we address this issue with our name and our dated look. And they came to us, and we went through what we call our purple process, but it's a brand development process and can include name changes. And we help them sort through a number of different naming ideas. We do a kickoff brainstorm session always with all of our clients, and we got the people who we needed in the room, and they really got involved, and there was a lot of buy-in and a lot of passion. And we helped change their name to Venture Community Services, and the tagline is Pathways to Empowerment. And this was a really sort of visceral feeling for the president and the people underneath them, but they really all loved sort of the direction. And I will say they're one of our best stories, because they all embraced it to such an extent, and they changed up everything. I mean, it wasn't just a logo tagline, changed their vans, their building. I was just taken through their employee break room, and they have totally transformed it. Bright colors, people love being there. They are actually starting a training program. I was brought in to help kick off a mentorship program with their upcoming leaders and help them develop their own personal leadership brands. So they are taking this new brand to the nth degree, and I think they're doing a great job.
That's interesting. So training the leaders on how to carry out the brand too.
Exactly.
Wow, that's interesting.
It is. And the leaders could be, I mean, they have a lot of group homes and day programs and things like that. So the leaders were coming from different areas, but they are living and breathing the brand, and they're managing people who also need to do that. The day-to-day workers, dealing directly with the families and the individuals. And when they can bring forth that excitement and that passion that they originally had when we rolled out the brand, it's all the better for the business.
That's awesome, because I think sometimes in business, even with my own website, I wrote the mission statement for the website. I don't really remember what it is, but I was very passionate about it when I did it. And I'm like, this mission statement is awesome. But then it's like on the website, and
You forget
that's
about
it.
it.
That's it. The mission statement's written and we're done. So, but I'm pretty sure that a brand strategist would say that I should be doing something with the mission statement.
Probably.
The starting point, not
Yes.
the finishing point.
That was part one.
It does feel like a finish line, because I wrote mine when we first opened up too, and I was like, oh, great, glad that's done.
done.
And I'll tell you too, mission statements are kind of funny because they are a little staid. This is why we're here. But when I get into what we end up really with is a positioning statement, which is a little bit different. It's a little bit more where we're headed and how we talk about ourselves. And I always start with the why, and I like to interview the president or the CEO. And you probably know Simon Sinek's Start With
Yes.
Why TED Talk and his famous book, but it's really been sort of the starting point for our brand development process. So
That's awesome. So do you think, like, somebody that would need a brand strategist, is it any size business? Small businesses? Big business?
Well, I think, it could be any size business. I think it just depends on the level of commitment and how deep you need to go. Certainly, the big brands like Coca-Cola and, all of those have, big, huge brand companies behind them. I was certified and I was certified through the brand establishment. They're out of California. And, I took a very intensive, extended education to get the certification. And there's about 40 of us across the country. But we are designed to sort of compete and bring that level of thinking to the smaller or mid-size companies. Now, if you're talking really small, 1 or 2 people, that sort of thing, maybe they're not going to be able to afford our services. However, they can still sort of live by the tenets of what a good brand is.
Right. Follow the blog. They can visit your blog.
Or workshops. I do workshops also. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Excellent.
And do you find that some companies, do you actually sometimes have to go into a company and help them figure out what their claim of distinction is?
That is actually what we do, yeah. Because no matter how much they try to articulate it, sometimes they really can't. They might have a competitive edge, but it might not be something that is actually delivered on, or they might know what the audience wants, but that's not really who they are at their core. And all of those things sort of have to come together. And even though, when I do a kickoff brainstorm with them and we try to uncover who they are, they should walk away with feeling like, oh yeah, that's it. It's no miracle, but sometimes it's getting everybody in a room and really sorting through. I once worked with an insurance company, and their big claim to fame was that they'd been in business for 180 years. And I said, okay, so that's defendable because all these other insurance companies are newer than that.
Yes.
But it was funny because I said, it's funny, your culture actually matches that because it's really ancient around here and dated, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And then when we talked about the audience, whether that was valuable to them, nobody really cares. Everyone wants to know, what are you doing for me lately?
Yes.
So here their big claim of distinction was
cares.
the history, and nobody really cared. So we needed to get them into a different alignment.
So that's cool. So you're talking to the customer too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Saying what matters to you and asking, does that resonate with them, whatever the claim of distinction is?
Sure. Absolutely. Yep. And it really should come from the core. Your brand shouldn't come from what your customers, demand and want. But if they don't want, if you have no audience in the end, then that's a problem.
Yes.
So it's a matter of discovering who you are at your core and then finding the connection with what motivates the audience.
Wow.
And are you seeing social marketing kind of taken over more from the traditional marketing media?
I really have. not just social, but the whole digital channel in general. I actually had done a speaking engagement with the Worcester Women's Leadership Conference last month or the month before, and I talked about how advertising has changed more in the last 5 years than it has in the previous 50. I mean, we were kind of going along, and occasionally you'd get, a new media, on the back of a airplane, tray table. All of a sudden you saw an ad and you're like, oh, that's different. That's kind of where we were for a long time. Media would show up in different places. Now it's completely 100% different. There's tens of thousands of places to put your ads online alone. So it definitely has changed, and it's harder to get your message out in a consistent manner because of all the places that you can put it. And people are trying to do sort of everything, and our recommendation is do a few things really well. So you can't be everything to everyone, and you can't be everywhere either.
That makes sense.
Interesting. And track it, because I know in the rebrand we did, we spent heavily on TV advertising, and I really don't think it mattered.
It's so hard because the TV and the mass media, radio, newspaper, those sorts of things are very high in awareness, but it's very hard to track.
Yes.
And so if you don't necessarily know if you're making an impact, but if you're running it concurrently with a digital ad where you can actually track them, track clicks to your website or phone calls or that kind of thing, that's probably the best way, a little brand awareness and a little tactical outreach.
Interesting. Okay, Chris, believe it or not, our time is already up. What's the best way for people to find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Chris Tieri, one word, and Facebook and also LinkedIn.
Okay.
My company is www.ideaagency.biz, and Brand Stanza, my blog is www.brandstanza.com.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Chris. That's going to do it for this edition of Get Real. Join us again for more next weekend.